There's a lot of people that are considering getting the heck out of the United States these days. It was COVID tyranny. It still is in a lot of places, but who knows? Maybe it's climate change tyranny coming next. If that's you and you're thinking about exploring life in another country, I've got an amazing resource to share with you, and that would be the Expat Money Show, hosted by Mikkel Thorup. Whether it's foreign residencies, second passports, asset protection, or just protecting your money from the tyranny of taxation, there is no better resource than the Expat Money Show. That is for certain. Mikkel has spent over 20 years traveling the world, visiting more than 100 countries while living in 9 different countries over that time. He can help you legally eliminate your tax bill and travel the world in the process. So, doesn't that sound fun? It is pretty damn appealing, I gotta admit. Subscribe to the Expat Money Show today, available on podcatchers everywhere, YouTube, or just head over to expatmoneyshow.com.
You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to another episode of the Counterflow Podcast. Great to have you with us here this week. This is a good one. My friend Vin Armani, aka Cyprian, is back on the show, and we're going to get to that in a second. Obviously, there's a lot going on over in Ukraine with Russia and all of this stuff. A lot going on. I would implore you guys to do your research on this stuff, because most of you understand that, especially during war times, the propaganda is on high for sure. And even prior to this, I think we understand that the propaganda has been on high the last few years. And so before, making these public pronouncements on where you stand on this issue or that issue, definitely do a lot of research. And I will be trying to get some folks on here to help you understand what's going on and why it's happening and all of that good stuff. I would implore you to pray for peace, because that's ultimately, I think, what most of us want, right? So just beware. And think about this, just the propaganda of the last 7 years or so. Well, it hasn't been going on lately because of, most of us understand the Russiagate stuff was just that. It was propaganda. But because of sources like the New York Times and CNN that pushed that Russiagate stuff so hard, you now have some progressives pushing for war with Russia, because essentially their hatred of Putin ties back to the New York Times and CNN telling them that Putin gave them Donald Trump. Think about that. That is true, that there are people that still believe that and hate Putin because of that. Think about that. Propaganda is extremely strong. So I implore you, like I said, to do some research. There's a lot of propaganda out there, and yeah, it's hard to break through it sometimes. And so I hope it's possible. And like I said, I'll be trying to get someone on this show that can help you do just that. And someone who I like having on this show is here today. Like I said, Vin Armani, aka Cyprian. We are here to talk about the things that are coming down the pipeline our way. Because for the last couple of years, there's been many instances in which we say things will return to normal if. Maybe not we say, that's what we're told at least, right? Just think back to March of 2020. Just a few weeks locked down, and then we can return to normal. And then it was just wear these masks, and then we can return to normal. And then things like take this injection, and then everything will return to normal. And we even I heard some people on the right, but certainly the media, just vote for Joe Biden. That will get us back to normal. He's presidential. Remember him? Then we will be back to normal. Do you think it's ever going to be back to normal at this point? That's the stuff we're going to be talking about today. A lot of you guys are well aware who Vin Armani is, co-founder over at Counter Markets, Trends and Strategies for Maximum Freedom, author of Render Unto Caesar, Prophecy, Prophet, and Proof of Work in the Dim Age, and just all around good guy. Welcome back to the show, Vin Armani, aka Cyprian. Welcome back, Vin. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm glad to be back. Thank you for having me back on.
Yeah, I guess first we'll ask, and I can kind of hear it, and you do not have to mute your side of it. It's growing on me. I like it. How are things in Saipan? As we record this, for you, it's Friday morning. For me, it's Thursday night. Yeah. Things in Lockhart, Texas are frozen and cold. How are you in Saipan?
Oh, it's a beautiful day. It's sunny, which is why, if you hear noise in the background, it's because it's such a beautiful day that you're hearing that. People are out working and walking around, and dogs are barking, animals are doing their thing. So no, it's beautiful. It's usually beautiful here, but today it was rainy all day yesterday, and today it's just gorgeous. Gotta say, it's just gorgeous.
How close are the people that live on either side of you or across the street? What's the distance?
We live in kind of a little enclave because it's like nestled into kind of the side of a hill. So they're relatively close. Like people are, they're shouting distance of me. My neighbor to my left over here, sort of to my south. But a lot, like when we first moved here, we had this house on the beach, and our nearest neighbors were, I don't know. There's probably 100 yards between us. You know what I mean? So like a lot of property and beach and everything. So it depends. Like here, you might find a house and you'll be secluded and you'll be on 5 or 6 acres. Or it could be, if you're in the mix of something and you're in a small village, everything's organized in villages here. So if you're in a smaller village that's kind of like an older one where people are nestled with each other, it's like being in the suburbs in the States.
What if some of your neighbors, maybe the ones you're closest with physically, if I said, hey, who is that guy that lives in that place? What would they say?
My closest neighbors, we all know each other. So we're all looking out for each other. Yeah. No. We're all close. Okay. We know families and everything like that. So yeah, it's people know, and probably even some of the people that I don't know me because we have mutual acquaintances. So that's something that happens. Yeah, I know who you are. You're this guy, so-and-so. There's only 50,000 people here in the entire Commonwealth, right?
Okay.
If that, there's probably closer to 40. So it's like not 6 degrees of separation. It's like 2 degrees of separation for everybody here.
Would they say, would someone say, that's the Bitcoin guy or that crypto guy?
Probably. I think most of them, that would be it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of my identity.
Okay.
Since I've been here for sure. I think some know me from my previous life, definitely. But few and far between. And even those people kind of now more associate me with Bitcoin. They see all the things that I'm doing. So.
Well, I brought you on to discuss this wonderful video. I guess we can call it a video. I sound like a boomer sometimes when I talk about these things, but it was on Twitter. I don't know the exact format that it was. But first, I didn't intend to ask you anything about foreign policy, but as we record, it is, let me think, February 24th. It's Thursday for me, Friday morning for you, February 25th. Everyone listening to this, I can pretty much be certain is aware of what has happened in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts off the top of your head on what's going on?
Well, it's certainly, it's close to me and my family. My wife is Russian, so she's a dual citizen, mm-hmm. and my children are dual citizens. So she has been obviously in communication with her friends and with the communities that she's a part of, which consist of Ukrainians and Russians and, Georgians and whatever, all the Russian-speaking peoples, Armenians, whatever. And, it's tense. It's tense. Things are, her family is from kind of the southern Caucasus part of Russia, so not incredibly far away, closer to Kazakhstan, really, but not incredibly far away from where things are happening. But there's going to be a massive impact on the Russian people. And I think, Europe's going to feel it as well. But this is going to have a huge... They've been struggling, man. I mean, people don't really understand how much the average person in Russia has struggled since the 90s. It's tough. It's tough. And the sanctions that the West puts and whatnot. But the Russian people are, they're hard people. If you had to pick like a group of people, a language that is spoken, Russian speakers are arguably the hardest people out there, and they'll get through for sure. I think they're gonna get behind Putin. I think I think it's the nature of the Russian soul to gather around the Tsar at this time, that's who he is culturally. That's who and what he represents. And so, they're going to go through it. And I'm just glad, that it does look like the West is going to stay out of this militarily. And, they're just going to do the sanctions and everything. So everybody's going to feel the pain of that. The average Russian person, most of all, regardless of they're saying, "Oh, we're sanctioning oligarchs and this and that." No, it's the average Russian person that's going to suffer in this. Okay, who've already been suffering, and but they're going to pull through with faith and sort of their strong backbones. They're going to pull through it, and I think pretty soon when things die down, you're going to have the same sort of situation that you had in Crimea, that you had in Abkhazia, that you had in all of these places where the Russian-speaking people, on the outskirts of the empire want to be reunited with each other. That's just what it is. It's 1,000-year-old empire. It's 1,000-year-old culture, and they want to be reunited. You're not going to be able to prevent that. Ukraine's going to have the Ukrainian-speaking part, and that's fine. And that's what's happened in the other sort of satellite regions. And then things will die back down until the next thing where they're going to sanction Russia, But this will be ongoing, and at least as long as Putin is alive, who knows how long that's going to be. He's 69 years old, but he looks pretty good for 69. It's going to go on as long as that takes place. And then, there'll be destabilization when he's gone, but we'll see. I think this one, could be a couple of years.
Well, I think the best way to start the topic I did want to get into with you is kind of your exit from California, because that's kind of when you started talking about some of the stuff I want to ask you about. So for my audience that's unfamiliar with that part of your life, let's go ahead and get into why you left California and then kind of what led you to Saipan specifically.
Sure. Well, maybe I'm from California. So I was born in DC, but I was raised in California. My family's been there be 6 generations now. So and in and around the area that they're in. So, I'm very much a Californian, but I hadn't been we were there, my family and I were there. We basically came back 2019 to 2020, almost to the day, like 1 year. After having been in New Hampshire for a year doing the Free State Project thing. Yeah. And then, me having been in Vegas, which is, it's a drive to California. It's a half hour to the border of California and the same desert that I was raised in, basically, where I was there for about a decade before that. So the reason that we came back to California in the first place from New Hampshire was we had our second child. And as I say, all of my family is in Southern California. Getting back with those 2 kids, just getting back around family was, I think, really a great move. It was a great year. Gave some support to my wife. Obviously, her family's in Russia, and gave my kids a chance to be back with grandma and cousins and extended family. And my brother had moved from Chicago, moved his family back to California as well, as he took a teaching position at Stanford. And it was wonderful. But then when the madness began, it was basically what I had been expecting and waiting for and sort of building toward for, probably since about 2016. And it looked exactly like what I was expecting. I was like, I'd been waiting for, okay, there's going to be a catalyst. What's it going to look like? And it just had all of the pieces in it, all of the pieces, and particularly the financial component, which we're now seeing. And a lot of people are just all of a sudden like, huh, where was this? Everybody thought this was about a virus, right? But even before the first California lockdown, I was already having public conversations with people that are out there. Amir Rosic comes immediately to mind, like March 16th. And our conversation wasn't about a virus. It was about, well, there's a new financial paradigm coming, and this is what it will look like. And this is going to be brought in with the virus. And seeing that, knowing Gavin Newsom, again, I'm a sixth generation Californian. So I've been following his trajectory since he was, local politics in San Francisco and all of that. I know this man. And as soon as he announced sort of the first set of lockdowns, and not even lockdowns, like, older people should stay home. And I saw the way that people were reacting in California. And I saw the glee with Gavin Newsom at being able to start acting like a tyrant. And I said, time to go. And the question was, well, where do we go? And it had just so happened that a few months before, Saipan had come onto my radar very unexpectedly because, a set of mutual friends, some people that I knew in the libertarian kind of anarchist community. Actually, the first person who said it to me was somebody who I met at Anarchapulco in 2017. Said, hey, did you hear Mark Edge, host of Free Talk Live? Of course, and me being in New Hampshire, I would host Free Talk Live with them on occasion. So I became friends with Mark. Mm-hmm. I knew what he was about in terms of free private cities and being interested in all of that. He's actually down doing a free private city project as we speak in Honduras. And they said, did you hear that Mark Edge went to Saipan? This is probably November of 2019. Went to Saipan with a one-way ticket. And I said, where? He went, where? Saipan? What is this? And they said, yeah. So I contacted him. He's like, I'm here. I'm in Saipan. I said, what is going on? He forwarded me over some information from Alex Ugorgi, who was sort of the one who set up this crypto frontier sort of project here, trying to get an intentional community of cryptocurrency advocates and businesses and developers. And I had talked to my wife about it, looked at Saipan and said, hey, would you like to live on of course, nothing was locked down. Everything was still normal at that point. Hey, would you like to go live on a tropical island? We could totally do this. Is this interesting to you? And she said, oh, yeah, it's interesting. Like, let's think about it. And so I was like, okay, well, let's see how everything works out. And maybe at the end of the year. So maybe at the end of 2020, like we could go. We could get everything ready. It would take about a year and we could go, right? Then when everything started to happen, it was just all the bells went off in my head like, well, this is the message. Because the question was like, where to go? Then I looked around. I saw, I got a chance to talk to Mark. I talked to Alex. I talked to them about the government. I talked to them about the situation. What's going on? How do the shelves look? Right? When things started to go weird in that initial phase and toilet paper was off the shelves. I remember walking into Trader Joe's in Redlands, California, like the first day that Gavin Newsom said, oh, everybody stay home. And I walked in, all the tortilla chips were gone. All the pasta was gone. It was weird. The meat was there, perfectly fine, right? But all the toilet paper was gone. All the paper towels were gone. I was like, okay, people are acting weird. If they're acting weird now, I know what's coming. They're going to be even weirder. And, so I asked them here, I said, well, what's the deal? And Alex sent me back pictures of full store shelves. He's like, well, we've got all the toilet paper. We've got all this. Nobody's freaking out. They have their supply chain thing. And, we don't really have a supply chain. I'm looking at the port. If I'm consuming something, and I'm anywhere on this island, it arrived in a container within 10 miles of me. So they don't even have big rig trucks. They just have trucks that can take one container and it just takes them. And sometimes it drops it right at the store. So we don't really have a supply chain. It comes from wherever, China, Philippines, States, whatever, lands at the dock, and then it's to the store, right? So when the things were backed up, for instance, at all these ports, never had a problem. I'll watch the ships come in. I'll watch the ships leave. There's nothing backed up. No, nothing. The ship just comes right in and then it takes off to its next thing. So all of these things were just screaming at me like, okay, let's go. Plus the opportunity to start building on some of the things that I was working on crypto-wise. Very good business climate here. Very good tax regime. Very accessible government. Again, there's only 50,000 people. So the governor, like within, I think, probably 2 months of being here, I had dinner with the governor and his wife. Like within 2 months of being here.
Wow.
Right? Just through mutual connections that were made at barbecues or whatnot. Oh, yeah, we should go. The governor's my cousin. You know, an invitation. Hey, I'm having the governor over for dinner. Do you want to come over and have dinner? Meet the governor? Sure. You know, within 2 months of being here. So, and also, you know, we never had a mask mandate here. People wear them because you got a lot of Southeast Asians, you know, and people will wear them voluntarily, but there was never a government mask mandate. There was never a lockdown, you know, all these things. But April 5th, the governor decided here, April 5th, 2020, we're going to lock down the airport. Basically, nobody in, nobody out. We're going to do that. And they actually left it for about a month. And so I told my wife, if we're going to go, because we didn't know how long that would last. And in other places like Palau and whatnot, it lasted like a year. You know, they're just now letting people onto the island. So I said, if we're going to do this, we got to do it now. And basically, yeah, with like 3 days notice, we bought the tickets, got all our stuff together, clothes on our back, sort of. Thankfully, you know, we were in a place with a lot of family, so it was easy to store stuff until they were able to ship it. And got on a plane and we got here on the last flight in. The last one before they locked it down. And we've been here since.
What point in time did you, and I feel like I almost could answer this just by, if I could remember your tweets, but at what point in time did you say or think, okay, we're not going back to normal. This is a forever change. Nothing is going back to, let's say, January 2020, how life was. I just this morning I was looking at photos that, you know, these photos pop up in your memories on your iPhone, and it was literally February of 2020, partying with friends, and I thought, wow, if I only knew. But what point did it hit you that things weren't going back that way?
I mean, March 2020.
Okay.
It's and the reason why is more. It's more just an understanding of the nature of politics than anything else. Because what I saw was a global crisis. And I know you always have to know that at any given time, there are a bunch of pet projects of tyrants sitting in the wings, waiting for a crisis so that they can implement them. These things that get introduced are not, you know, you think about even down to the vaccines, like how do you manufacture this much pharmaceuticals with this little notice? Oh, no. This takes getting the factories tooled up, getting all of this. No. This was done and waiting. So for me, I knew like, okay, there's a series of things, whether it's pharmaceutical wise, whether it's financial wise, whether it's war wise, whether you go down the list, surveillance wise, implementing, different communications technologies, all of these things, giving bailouts to certain groups, bank bailouts, whatever you want to do, paying off your constituency, all of that was just waiting for this. And I said, well, this one's too big because everybody's going to get involved in this one. And once you have that level of momentum, it can't go back. Like it's not that in these crises that anything ever does go back. It's just that you don't notice it because it's like one thing and it's drawn out over like 6-7 years. Right. But look, we still have to take off our shoes at the airport. Okay.
Yep.
For the shoe bomber, Richard Reed. People don't even know why. Youngsters don't even know why. They think we've always taken off our shoes at the airport. You know?
The liquid rule is the same thing. Yes.
It came in at the same time. It came in like maybe 2 to 3 months after the shoes thing. Right? So, no, in my adulthood, I've walked on planes with holding drinks.
Yep.
holding water
Yeah.
in my hand, in my adulthood, right? When I was flying from California to DC and back for college, right? Of course, I didn't take off my shoes. I didn't have this. The security was next to nothing. I walked through like a metal detector at Ontario Airport and onto the tarmac.
And your family could meet you at the gate if they wanted to back then, which is another thing kids will never, I mean, I sound like a boomer again, but that is crazy to think my family would pick me up at the gate and you'll never do that again.
Yeah. And so you asked, like, when did you know it wasn't going back to normal? I lived through 9/11. None of that's gone back to normal. Why should I assume that something orders of magnitude bigger, like that's going to affect every single person is going to have to deal with this? It's not just like tie a yellow ribbon for the things that happen in two cities, in New York and in Arlington, Virginia. It's not that, right? It's going to be everywhere. So I was like, well, if we haven't gone back to normal from 9/11, this is such a much bigger crisis. I saw it. I said, well, then it's never going back to normal. March 2020.
A lot of people in our circles talk about the Gulag and FEMA camps. And I think one of the things I've learned listening to you and watching you and reading your stuff is your point that they don't need physical prisons and gulags and camps anymore. And so it's almost hard for us, if you've been in the liberty circles for a number of years, to get out of that mindset, like where they're going to take you off and put you in this physical camp. It's deplatforming, it's electronic, it's financial institutions. It just happened in Canada. It just happened to people, not only in Canada, donating to those in Canada, accounts frozen, money gone. Can you speak to that?
I did a presentation, video presentation. It's long. I think it's about 8 hours long in different segments, called the Ascendant Project. I did this back in 2016. And I basically laid out a lot of the framework that I've used, that the cognitive framework that I have, that some of it is some real esoteric things about the way that human society moves. And these patterns, the important thing is there's fundamentally these four archetypes that are coming on top of each other. There's been many different ways of expressing this. In this case, this is what's expressed not only in the East, in India, in their Varna system, but also in tarot cards. We see it in our playing cards. And it's basically that there's like the commoner, clubs. There's the warrior, spades. Espada means sword. There is the thinker or the priest. That's going to be chalices or hearts, right? The blood of Christ. That's their weapon. These are all their weapons. And then there is the merchant, and that is pentacles or diamonds, right? So money is their weapon. And we've been living in, there's a guru, P.R. Sakar, who I was initiated into his sect, I guess it is, of Tantra when I was younger. And he had laid this out because it's also the Hindu caste system is that. So again, it's like, why do we keep seeing the same pattern of these same things, right? It's the Hindu caste system and it's in your playing cards, which we use to do magic, right? So interesting, like most people don't even, like they didn't even know, oh, there's symbolism in here? Yeah, it's about society. It's about what is going on in your society. And they all play against each other. So they're playing this like game of paper, scissors, rock, right? And they travel in this order. We've been living in a thinker paradigm. What we know as civilization is the thinker-priest paradigm. And so first you start with like the commoner. These are tribal people, whatever. Then what rises out of that is a warrior king caste because they become chiefs or kings or whatever. Then you have that. Then what rises out of that, who gets control of the king? The priest class, the advisors, the church, right, becomes the dominant institution. And the church and what came out of the church in the West, which is the Enlightenment, which they're all the same people, right? The people who are scientists today would have been priests in the Middle Ages because they would have been monks, they would have been priests, and much of the science that we know, Genetics, right? Mendel, he was a monk. Okay, a lot of what we know as science, this early science, came from out of monasteries. Science, literature, the first universities were to teach priests. And still to this day, there are many Dominicans, Franciscans, Loyola Marymount University, right? We still have many universities that come from out of these religious traditions. Our founding fathers were thinkers, right? The founding fathers of America were thinkers. That's what it was all about. What comes after that? Who gets control of the thinkers? We saw it over the last 2 years. What we're seeing is the shift, right? We've been seeing it our whole lives that, those politicians are bought who are thinkers, right? That's their job, to think, to debate, to speak, to write the laws, to be thoughtful individuals, right? And that's our system is built that way. Who gets control? The moneyed interests. The same interests that got control of the church that always do. Big pharma has control. Big ag has control of the scientific community. This is we know this. When they say trust the science, it's backed. There's money backing it, and where the money backs it is what it is. And so this is what people need to understand is that the gulags were a part of the concentration camps and all of that. Were a part of the thinker paradigm. Like you go back and you look at the theory about it, even the fact that it's Marxism, it's communism, that, you're not going along with the plan, we're going to put you into this, there's going to be a kangaroo court, we're going to do all of these things. There's this broad bureaucracy of moving the people, even down to the execution and the way that they recorded and all of that, that's gone. We're now in the pentacles, we're in the diamonds weapon time. Everybody uses money. And most everybody uses financial institutions. So these things have been put into place that now people think, even people like preppers and the liberty community and all of this, they think, I'll be fine. I wouldn't need money, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, how did you buy the equipment to build your bunker? How did you purchase all of the things that are in your larder? You did it with money. If I was to take, maybe you have 5 years worth. Are you only going to live 5 years? Because if I was to take your ability to ever receive or spend money ever again, now what? Now what? Right? Like, I don't need electricity because I got a diesel generator. How much diesel fuel do you have? And how do you get diesel fuel if not money? Do you have a plant? Are you bringing it out of the ground and refining fuel? Because if you're not, and I cut you off from money, so the thing is this, you don't need a gulag because if I can cut you off from, and this is what people don't understand how deep this system is. It's not just taking your money now. We're going to a cashless society. It's taking away you and your descendants, your children's ability to ever use money again. The concept of money. This is a death sentence. And it is so much scarier than the gulag. So much scarier that the effect that it will have in terms of normative social influence, they don't have to scare you with the gulag anymore. One person in a community, you excise them and they get to, people watch what happened to them. Total compliance. Total compliance out of fear. Total self-censorship. All of that. And the only way that you are not a complete slave in such a system, it's so subtle and so powerful. The only way that you're not is that you have to be able to survive such a scenario, which means you have to be operating in a parallel system, a parallel financial system. That's it.
My favorite sponsors and yours, PalomaVerdeCBD.com. They've got some new products that I will be telling you about. As always, I can tell you, Carlos and Vanessa, the owners of PalomaVerdeCBD.com, wonderful people. So when you buy from them, you're supporting a great couple that are like-minded, and it helps support this show that I know you love. Check out these new products. They've got the CBD massage oil. Let your mind wander on that one for a bit here. They've got the full spectrum unflavored CBD tinctures. check this out, ladies. After a hard day at work, how does a CBD bath bomb sound to you? Well, they've got those now. They've got the CBD soft gels, of course, the CBD gummies, mint tinctures, the salve stick, and of course, the pet treats, the stuff that my French bulldogs, Lux and George, both use every morning. Now, you've heard me rave about the sports cream before. I'm going to read you something one of my friends and listeners wrote to me specifically about that. Last year, I gave my dad a bottle of the Paloma Verde sports cream as part of a present for his 86th birthday. He's very active, walking 3 to 4 miles a day, as well as working with a strength and conditioning coach. Still, his back often bothered him because, well, no prescriptions that he takes ever fixed it. Well, he found the Paloma Verde cream to be very effective in relieving the occasional discomfort. Last week, he slipped on some ice in his driveway and suffered from, thankfully, minor injuries, including his back. For 3 days, he was unable to sleep due to his back pain. He had run out of the Paloma Verde cream, so I gave him the link to the reorder. It arrived within a day or two, and he immediately began using it. He sent me this text the next morning after enjoying his best night's sleep in almost a week since the fall. Quote, "The cream application last night worked like a charm. I was pain-free in just about any position," unquote. In addition, my sister, who was staying with him, was so impressed by his results that she ordered some for her husband, who regularly experiences leg pain at night. My dad resumed much of his regular activity and attributes much of his recovery to the Paloma Verde sports cream for the pain relief and just how much it helped him get the much-needed rest at night. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a honest-to-God true statement. Someone wrote to me about this cream that I'm telling you, I always brag about how amazing it is. You will find it at palomaverdecbd.com, where you will get 25% off of your order when you use promo code BUCK at checkout. That's BUCK at checkout for 25% off of your order. Go support them and support this show. You will not be sorry. Let's get back to the show. You're in the video that I was referencing, and obviously just from what you just said, you predict that everyone's going to suffer. And I know early on people accused you of, well, you left the freest country in the world, you ran away, this kind of stuff, you fled, and you made the point. Look, there's going to be suffering in Saipan, there's going to be suffering in Texas, there's suffering all across everywhere. I think one of the things is this generation, the last several generations, akin to the good times create weak men, aren't used to suffering. And I'm not above that by any means. Is that one of the biggest problems in people generally accepting some of the things you're saying? Do you run into that? Just kind of the comfort class, like, oh, you're crazy. I've been fine. I'll get through this. That kind of mentality.
Yeah, it is interesting because even this idea of anywhere that I would go would be somehow fleeing, right? It's I have to be patient with people because I understand that, like, people don't know me, right? They could probably, but still they have so little frame of reference that, like, it probably wouldn't even register with them, that it's like they could probably look at my life and see that I'm not someone who's often at rest, right? Like they could go back and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I was a star of a TV show, but you could go back and look at pictures of me at that time. Look at my body, right? At that time. It's like, you got to suffer to get that. You know what I mean? Like, you got to suffer for all of these. I mean, the fact that I'm able to, with 5 days notice, pick up my family and be like, let's go on it. Let's go. We're going to this place. We're going on to this island. And to be able to do that, people are like, well, you could do that, but I'm not able to. Not all of us are able to do that. And it's like, yeah, not everybody is able to do that. But I don't come from wealth. I'm from San Bernardino, California. That's the poorest city in California. My parents were, my mother was a school teacher. Okay. Like, I didn't come from wealth. I didn't have my college paid for. I went on a full academic scholarship. Like, the reason why I was able to do those things is because I chose when to suffer. right? Like there's nobody on my back to work. The things that I work on, there's nobody telling me to work on anything, but I work 10, 12 hours a day, every day. And it's like, you got to choose when to suffer. You got to choose when. And so that's the whole thing, that it's like, if I'm going somewhere because that somewhere is allowing me to work harder. I'm not going, it's like if I'm choosing a gym, right? Like when I was heavy into the bodybuilding and I would choose a gym, I would choose the gym that would allow me to work out harder, that had better equipment, a better setup where I would feel more comfortable to be in there longer, that maybe had some, ice baths or whatever, where I could know that I could work out harder. Like that, I chose the place that allowed me to work harder and that would maximize the amount that I was working. And so I think that this is the place where people want this consumer society, and which is basically the big trap. The consumer society, what you're sold is, well, buy this and you can work less. Buy this thing and 5-minute abs. It's like, no, dude, there's no such thing as 5-minute abs. And it's not even just your workout, but you're going to suffer with your diet. People used to ask me, they're like, wow, God, you're in such great shape. Like, what do you eat? What's your diet? And I'd be like, chicken breasts and vegetables and water.
Yeah.
And they'd say, no, but I mean what additional, and what about cheat days? We were just talking about this the other day with some guys who were here. I said, a cheat day is when I just can't take it anymore. When I've gone so long with chicken breast and vegetables, and I'm just like, I'm in a terrible mood because no carbs. Maybe it's 3 weeks. Maybe it's a month. How fit do you want to be? That my income relies on this. My livelihood relies on this at the time when that was the case. So it's like, no. It's not a cheat day. It's I literally can't take it anymore. But before that point, believe me, there's been a week of me struggling through it. And so it's like, when are you going to suffer? You have to choose how you're going to suffer, because then you don't have to suffer in the other way, the grasshopper and the ant, right? You just got to put your treasures up in heaven. And that's the work that you're doing. That's not about what you've put in the bank, right? Because they can take your bank account away, as we see. It's like, if they took everything away from you now, could you reconstitute yourself? If no, then you haven't put your treasures up in heaven. You don't have knowledge. You don't have skills. You don't have a spiritual practice that you could go to every single day that's going to give you strength and meaning through the suffering. That's what's missing. And those things are all learned. Nobody gets those by birth. You have to push yourself to actually go and to do the things that are going to give you that knowledge, that are going to give you those skills, that's going to give you spiritual practice. There's Orthodox brothers who, and I mean, this is the Orthodox have been through this in the last 100 years for sure, with the suffering, with the gulags. But it's like, yeah, I'm memorizing hymns. Like, memorize your prayer rule, because if you do end up in prison, then at least you've got your prayer rule. Have it memorized, have the hymns memorized, because at least then you've got something. When they take everything, that's the thing they can't take. That's where the mindset has to be right now. That's who's going to make it through this without just acquiescing to the slavery system.
Yeah, they've set this whole system up, maybe on purpose, maybe just the incentives have worked out this way, to take advantage of everyone's sense of comfort. And again, I'm not above this by any means. I'm not trying to think my listeners to think like, well, he thinks he's certainly above all this. I'm not. It's freezing outside. I'm in a nice heated home talking to someone in Saipan, thousands of miles away, face to face here. So I understand that I fall victim to this as well. But there's this boiling frog scenario where you can appeal to our sense of comfort and wanting to, we saw it all last year and the year before, get back to normal, wear the mask, take this experimental medication from a needle into your arm. Just vote for Joe Biden. I saw Republicans saying, you know what, let's just vote for Joe Biden. Things will get more normal once again. We will be comfortable once again. That seems to be the exact spirit that they're taking advantage of. I assume you see that as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's just incentives, but I think, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, powers and principalities. The thing is that there is a constant energy for our worse nature to be let out. And like I've said many times, if you want to be rich, find a way for dumb, lazy people to be dumber and lazier. That's how you make yourself rich. Like if all you're concerned about is money, and that's basically a con game, isn't it? Like Iceberg Slim in his book Trick Baby says you can't con an honest man. Every confidence game, right? Like con men. Every con depends entirely on the greed of the mark. The only people who can be marks are someone who believed that they could get something for nothing. If you approach some guy who's like, you got to work for stuff, he'll never fall for a con because he'll look at it and be like, no, there's a catch. What's the catch? Right? Because he would know there's always a catch. There's always work. If I'm going to actually get something, and the catch is always, the best con men always make the mark feel like he's in on the con, but really he's the one being conned. And they make him think somebody else is the mark, but really that mark is actually part of the con, right? So it's like, those are the best con games. And that's what we've been in. Because you see that like two sides have been pitted against each other, right? People feel like they're in on one side or the other, whether that's the wokes. I call them the Church of Woke with the W-O-K-E and the Church of Woke with the W-O-Q. Okay? But they're both the left and the right. W-O capital Q. Okay? Both of them are basically being conned. They both think that they're in on the con, but they're not. All they're doing, because, and you see it, right? So it's like Gavin Newsom's doing executive orders. Screw Gavin Newsom. Terrible. This is terrible. DeSantis in Florida does executive orders to stop certain things, to prevent other certain things that you don't like. Wonderful. Should be the president. Wonderful. But it's like, wait a minute. Both of those are violations of, like, if the executive order here is a violation because you don't have the right to do that, the executive order here is a violation as well. So what they want is power over you. They don't give a damn whether or not you're wearing a mask. They don't care. That's not what this is about. They don't care if you put something in your arm. Who cares? They don't care about that. It's not about that. It's about, are you an obedient slave? Are you an obedient slave? And part of being an obedient slave is letting them get away with things that they shouldn't be able to get away with. It will always be couched. Plato in the Republic, okay? This is BC, 400 BC. In the Republic writing, Plato says, the people always have some champion, some hero that they put above them and nurse into greatness. This and no other is the seed from which a tyrant springs. When first he appears above ground, he is a protector. This is thousands of years ago. And one of the fundamental philosophical texts, and people still don't get it. That's how that's how fallen we are. That's how fallen we are. And so what has happened is that basically we are at an extreme level of fallenness. The tools that are being used by those to gain control are godlike. They can communicate with every single person instantaneously. And they can stop the communication that they don't like. And it's not even based upon some hard pressure. All you got to do is just install YouTube on the phone by default. Right? That's it. Install YouTube on the phone by default, and then boop, YouTube is the number one thing. Where's the hard pressure? Nobody's forcing anybody to watch YouTube instead of one of these other platforms or protocols or whatever. So they got it. Nobody's forcing anyone to use Twitter. Nobody's forcing anyone to use Facebook. You could have ditched Facebook at any, but then how would I, but I'm getting all my news from Facebook. Oh, well, there you go. Oh, but I'm getting all my news from Twitter. Well, there you go. Right? And who's in control of that database? Is it you? Do you know what anybody else is getting in the world? This is the game. We've let the vampire in, and so it's to be expected what's coming. It's so predictable and so predicted, really.
I know your answer. I just want to hear you explain it in your own way. Are we up against something larger than flesh and blood human beings? And can you explain that?
Well, we most definitely are. I don't want to get to, because I know that you've probably got a good chunk of your audience at this point that is totally wonderfully prepared for a powers and principalities discussion, in the fully spiritual realm, I think. But even to just take it at a more secular and materialist level, a lot of the people who would balk at me saying, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, obviously, quoting St. Paul from Ephesians, they would balk at me saying that about something written 2,000 years ago, except for the fact that these are the same people who talk about the military-industrial complex. The left, right? The big pharma, big ag. Is the left flesh and blood? What is that? Is that a flesh and blood thing? No. And that's exactly what St. Paul is talking about. He's saying, if you're left, you can't get the left, get around anything. Hold the left in your hand. Touch the left. There is no such thing. It's a collective consciousness or some pattern of behavior. And it's like when Peterson, he attributes it to Jung, but I've never seen where Jung says it. But it's not, people don't have ideas, ideas have people, right? Ideologies, communism, Antifa. They're anti-fascist. Fascism. Hold fascism. Where's the flesh and blood of fascism? Corporatism, consumerism. The Democrat Party. Okay? What's being said here is, and now I think hopefully some secular people can start to be like, oh yeah, I'm a lot more religious than I thought I was. Oh yeah, we all think this way because this is the way that reality works. So yeah, if you're I'm against the left, then St. Paul just called you out. Okay? Because that's not flesh and blood. That's powers and principalities. Principalities meaning rulers. So he's saying the influence of some pattern of behavior that comes from where? Right? Where does the left come from? There are people who are on the left. There are wokes, right? Somebody who is woke. Yeah, there's books that have, that people are like, oh, this is Beverly D'Angelo or whatever her name is. There's these books. How many wokes have actually read any of these books? Right? It's not that. It's memes, it's ideas that are traveling as groups, as packets of ideas, and that are getting into people and taking them over, possessing them. And that's what it is that we're dealing with. And so part of getting free is you've got to realize what ideas are possessing you. And then you've got to choose what ideas you let possess you, because you don't have a choice to just eliminate them all. Anybody who's like, I think for myself, I'm a free thinker. I'm like, really? What language did you just tell me that in? What language did you just tell me that in? Right? Did you invent that language? Or did you learn that language? Do you think that nothing else, there was no other content that came along with just the learning of the language? the limitations of the language, the way your brain needs to be structured to construct the language. There are certain emotions that only people who speak certain languages can even feel, and that are unexplainable in other languages. Prime example, Portuguese, saudade. Saudade. Ask any Portuguese, Brazilian person, ask them about saudade, or just look up the word, saudade. Tons of songs in Portuguese, right? Tons of poems, everything. It's for them, they're like, this is our emotion. It's a cultural emotion that no one else can feel and that they can't explain to you, but they know it deep within them. And it's like, that just comes from the language you speak. You think there aren't all those things in English or any other language? Of course they are. So you saying, oh, it's all my memes. What language did you tell me that in? Right? So this is what we have to understand is, what have we let in? What have we let in? The same way that we've spent the last 2 years, that the whole thing about the last 2 years is don't let in some physical virus, right? What we've been letting in, the trick is what we've been letting in is mimetic viruses. And you could see it, they're running wild and they're exacerbating all the ones that we currently had, and we're getting added more. People need to that's the armor of God. People got to put on armor. Forget about the physical mask. You need to let those other memes not get in, and you need to have the immune system, the mimetic immune system, right? This is what spiritual practice is about in every tradition, but in particular, the Christian tradition is all about this, right? In particular. And so look at it however you want, but at the end of the day, I think it would be hard for anybody to deny that we do think in these ways, powers and principalities, wrestling not against flesh and blood, and particularly probably the listeners of this show.
I hope so. What did you think about let me ask it this way. What did that trucker convoy in Ottawa represent to you? What did you think about that stuff? Because I understand there's so many people in our circles that were cheering it on and saying, yeah, they're fighting the system. There's some other people that see it and say, well, what you're doing is basically creating an example for the regime to use and crush. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's the same pattern as January 6th. It's the same pattern. And I mean, yes. On that day when it happened, people go look at the tweet on January 6th as it's occurring. I said, the same people who are cheering on the idiots at the Capitol right now are the same people who would have cheered on the fire at the Reichstag. It's an excuse. You think you're going to take over the capital of the United States? Like, there's no way that works out except giving the tyrants an excuse to do something that they already wanted to do, as we said before. It's a crisis that they're not going to let go to waste. And it will serve nothing except, the same idea as like going and tagging a building, like vandalism. It's nihilism, really. Like, these things are nihilistic. People thought, oh, it's good that they're going up there. I understand that the intentions of these people and their frustration, I get it. I totally get it. But their level of sophistication about how they handle it was, quite frankly, the way that a 12-year-old handles things. Very immature, infantilized. Because if what you're protesting, if what you're truly against, is the fact that your government is going to shut down economic activity, right? That was the whole idea. Like, the initial thing was truckers go, they're unvaccinated, they come back, they have to quarantine for 2 weeks. That puts them out of work. They're not going to be paid, right? It's going to shut down economic activity. Now, mind you, 90% of the truckers were already vaccinated, okay? So it's like 10% of the people now these are the people just going across the border. That's the key. May have been borders in provinces, may have been some of it as well. So in that case, what you don't do is you don't shut your truck off. That's just obvious and clear. Like, even just from a political standpoint. Okay? You go, and and this is why history is so important, and this is why you're not taught it, is that go back to every protest movement, okay? Every one, especially the ones that have had something about labor involved with them. If the threat is that they're going to take away your ability to do something, then you continue to do the thing under threat of arrest, beating, all of that. It's the sit-ins, okay, in the civil rights movement. It's Rosa Parks on the bus. Now, they did a bus boycott. They did a bus boycott in Montgomery, but this is after, right? This is after. So, yeah, sure, you could end up with the truckers doing something where they all shut off their trucks after the government has arrested people and put them in prison, right? For violating it. After, because then it's not a matter of, and you could see when I talk about this vandalism and nihilism, well, what was the motto? What became the motto of the whole convoy? Honk, honk. What does it signify? It signifies nuisance. Audio vandalism is what it signifies. Because what is it saying? First off, it's the clown, the Pepe clown. So it's clown world. Okay, so it's the Joker. Okay, so it's nihilism. Then it's getting in and being able to inflict suffering on your enemies, right? People who you see as your enemies, but it's not only your enemies, it's even your allies, which is the Joker, right? That's the pattern. So you know it's not righteous at that point. And it's the same exact idea as January 6th. It's the same thing. And so much of it is because we have an infantilized culture. People are not willing to suffer. People were like, yeah, we went out to it was so crazy. My mind was, it was like exploding, right? And look, my mother's Mexican and we're from California, right? So that piece of like the United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, like that was baked into me. Okay. On the other side, my father's black. Okay. And my grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman. And I went to Howard University. So it's like the civil rights side and all of the struggle of Black America has been baked into me as well. My mind was absolutely blown when people were like, yeah, it's good. This is working well. I've taken my kids over there the last 2 weekends. They've got bouncy castles and hay slides. I was like, what could be further from civil rights marchers walking arm in arm across the Edmund Pettus Bridge when they knew that on the other side, they were about to be beat, they were about to have dogs sicked on them, they were about to be sprayed with fire hoses, and they walked into it singing hymns. What could be different than let's take the kids because they have bouncy castles, hay slides, and DJs? What could be different from bouncy castles, hay slide, and DJs than Mahatma Gandhi, which is what started the Indian Revolution movement, when the British said, there's a huge tax on salt, we have the monopoly, you're not going to be allowed to make salt anymore, as Indians who had made for thousands of years going to the ocean and making salt, of him walking from his ashram hundreds of miles on a salt march to go to the sea to just make salt. And hundreds of thousands of people following him and thousands of people getting arrested in the process by the British. And that began the Indian independence movement. What could be different from that than I'm going to take the kids because they have bouncy castles, hay slides, and DJs?
I wasn't going to ask you this, but you said the word nihilism multiple times. And off the top of your head, how destructive has the spirit of nihilism been on where we're at right now in society at large?
It's everything. It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this idea, it's 4chan, it's Reddit. It's almost every anon on Twitter. Like, that's the reason why people are being anons. is because it's to be able to be nihilistic. It is this idea, and I think that a lot of it comes from people talk about a breakdown of the family, but what I really think that it's about is a disincentive for people to have children, and an incentivizing of the culture within the culture to not have children. Because, and I can speak for myself, like I had kids pretty late, like in my late 30s, I started having kids. And, the flip, I often think like, how would my life be if I had started having kids in my 20s? Right? Like, how much different would my life be? Because it was like, what does it really matter? The things that I was pursuing, whether it's fame, whether it's money, whether it's, sexual conquest, all of these things. And it's like, they're empty calories. They're junk food. There's nothing. Even like my own self and, don't I look good in the mirror with my clothes off? Right? That it's like, at a certain level, it's functional. Like, back when I was in my early 20s and fighting and all of those things, like, okay, great. But at a certain level, it's just like, what? Yeah, it's your business, but your business is also about your narcissism, right? So the nihilism, it's bred from this underlying feeling of, they talk about the meaning crisis, but it's right there because all of the things that you're being presented, just do this, just go to this school. Just get this job. Then you'll be happy. And you sit around and you fantasize like, yeah, when I get that job, yeah, it'll be all good. And then I'm going to do this and this. And then what are you going to do? It's like, yeah, then I'm going to go down and I'm going to get a loan on a new car and I'm going to get this car and that's going to be great. And I'll put a stereo in there and that keeps you for a week, right? And then it's like, okay, I'm going to go and get a house. And like, I'm going to buy this house and do this. Maybe I'll have some rental properties and like, and Grant Cardone is saying I should do this and that, and then maybe I'll go and start this, and it's like there's nothing there. I'll go to the gym and work out, and it's like there's nothing there, nothing. And our souls know that. They know that, and so those people who at least have enough success that they can pursue those things, pursue the school and or the good career and keep themselves in shape and watch their diet and at least have some dating success and, these sorts of things, be able to get married, be able to do these things. That's enough to hold those people over. But like half the population, especially of men, are not going to have success at that. And they also, in previous times, they would have success because there were mentors within their community, within their church, within their family, older men who would take them under their wing, even as they started working, maybe in a trade or something like that. And it's like, you're a carpenter. And then you meet this cool, maybe your dad's a carpenter and he takes you out, but this foreman over here is this cool guy and kind of takes you under his wing and you sort of learn some things or whatever. And you feel like you're part of the community of men. And they help you along and give you and you hear about their marriages and their relationships and you take some things away in life. And where is that? Right? It's like people are even in their own age groups. That's a big one for the nihilism. They're in their own age group and they just travel with this cohort. They get no influence. Okay, boomer. No. That's where the knowledge is. They've been where you are. That's where the wisdom lies, right? Every time you okay boomer, you're discounting somebody's lived experience, right? Maybe you don't know. But what's being said is, no, you do know. You know it all, but we know that we don't know. And so then, so that it doesn't come time to pay the piper, like maybe the whole world should just blow up. Maybe everything should fall apart and we should all just start over because I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm 40. There's no it used to be like, no, you're going to work in the factory, then you're going to become a foreman, then you're going to become, like a floor, manage the floor, then you're going to go and You're going to do work in a higher level, a regional level or whatever. And you're going to go on and on and on. And we're going to put you through school at GM and we're going to do all of these things. And you're going to retire with the pension. You're going to have white picket fence and all of that. And it's like, cool, I can get there. I know the trajectory. What about a kid now? Even out of college this year with a liberal arts degree, like where's the trajectory? What are you going to do? Be a social media influencer? Right? Like that's the best thing. That's the best possible option that you have. And that's going to be 0.0001% of people. So put into that situation, how could you be anything other than a nihilist if you don't have anything else to stand on?
Mm-hmm. I got to respect your time. I could ask you like 10 more things. I've got a lot written down.
It's all good. I'm here for you, man. Whatever you need.
CBDC, as it's being known now, central bank digital currency. Obviously, a lot of my people listening will understand that you've got quite the background in crypto, Bitcoin specifically. What for those of us who are completely ignorant on central bank digital currency, what's to expect from that?
It's a total financial panopticon. It's something that we've never, ever experienced. It's basically going to be the end of bank accounts as you know them. The level even of distribution and, shall I say, decentralization that we have right now when it comes to banks will be gone. Cash, physical cash, is going the way of the dodo as well. This is basically meant to replace cash, but it serves, because it's digital, it serves the primary function that we use banks for now. So primarily what we use banks for now is to be able to transact financially over communications channels, right? And this is, people don't really think about this, but it's like before the Visa network, you would have cash on hand for the most part. People would have cash on hand and then they would have money in the bank. And a lot of what was in the bank would be, that would be their money in their savings account. When checking came along, they would put a little bit more, but this is still pretty new. Businesses, very few businesses, larger businesses, but accepting checks, there's some risk there. So it would be like a grocery store. I remember when I was younger, my mom writing a check at the grocery store. I definitely remember that, right? Or the dry cleaner or some other places like that, But to go out to dinner, to go to a restaurant, you go to McDonald's now, you can pay with your Visa card. That's unheard of that you would pay with a check or something like that at a McDonald's. They just look at you like you're a crazy person, right? Or at a liquor store or something like that. They'd be like, what are you doing? I'm not accepting your check. So what we're moving to is now even the next paradigm. And this next paradigm is the CBDC that's for the US. It's called Project Hamilton. At the moment, the code has been released. White paper's been released. I did a great video on it. Tobias Ruck and Amaury Sachet, two other developers. Amaury's the one developer behind Bitcoin ABC and basically the creator of Bitcoin Cash. Tobias Ruck is a great developer. He spent a lot of time here in Saipan in the last 2 years. I think he spent about 7 or 8 months here. Go ahead. You were going to ask something.
I actually spent some time with, I spent some time with him in Mexico just a few months ago. That is a bright young man.
Exactly. The two of them have done some more technical stuff and they're sort of making the rounds. They're definitely people to listen to. May have to listen a few times and go and look some things up, but it's important to know. I think the thing that people need to understand is that it's a complete paradigm shift in your understanding of money. So, and the power that is given to the people in control of this. What you saw and what we're seeing in Canada is like a mere glimmer, a shadow of what's coming. Because what's coming is the ability to remove you from the financial system, not only completely, like where you can't interact at all, but also granularly. Granularly, yes. In a granular way. So that the level of control over what money you can receive and from whom, and what money you can send out to pay for things, to whom and what things you can buy, within the next 10 years, the level of control by those in control of the central bank digital currency will be to such a degree that, like they have in China, but even more so, hey, you did whatever political thing that we don't like, guess what? 2 weeks, you can't buy meat. You can't travel on a train or buy a subway thing if you're in a major metropolitan area, or buy a plane ticket for the next month or ever, or until you do X thing that we need you to do. Right? And these sorts of things, you can't pay for educational things. So maybe it's like, oh, your kids go to private school? You're paying for that? Nope, can't do that anymore. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is, you can only buy these certain essential items. Oh, Christmas is coming up? No toys. You're not allowed to buy toys with your money. Your money's no good for toys. Right? Kids, whatever, you should have behaved better. Should have behaved better. Streaming services. Nope, can't do that. Phone. Nope, you can't pay a phone provider. You have to pay with the CBDC. Nope, can't. It's not even that like they tell the phone provider, oh, cancel this guy's account. It's just like you simply can't pay for it. You can't pay for it. And it has to come from you because it's going to be combined with ID. That's why you see the digital ID being talked about, and particularly talked about by the bankers. So it uses a lot of the cryptography. So the private keys and all of that from Bitcoin, that's going to be tied to your ID. So it will be, oh, you don't need a mandate. You don't need a mandate. It's just like, oh, are you up to date on your shots? No? Okay. The number of things that you can buy just went rock bottom. The number of things that you can't buy gas. Sorry. Can't fill up. How do I get to work? You better get that shot. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not even like, there's not even somebody you could call. There's not even somebody that you could protest. It's an algorithm. It's like, here's your app. It goes to red. And all of a sudden you go to use your central bank digital currency at gas. Sorry, sir. Sorry, sir. Not this transaction won't go through. It's like, oh man. So you take the level, now when you have a system like that, you think about the level of control. And this goes back to the idea of why the people who are preparing for gulags and shootouts have no clue. It's absurd because they're not going to knock down your door. They don't need to take your guns.
Yeah.
They did something so much worse. And most people are not, they're like, keep your guns. How does your gun stop the algorithm? You're going to shoot the algorithm? How? And then how do you even protest? Right? How do you even have the funds to protest? Oh, you're headed. Oh, we see your GPS in your truck headed in this direction. Okay, well, can't buy fuel now. How are you going to get here? Right? So this is the scenario that we're facing. This is here, by the way. Biden just put in, and this is all going under the wire now because they've got this little war thing. So it's great. So all this is under the wire. Biden just put out a memorandum to every agency saying you've got 180 days to get back to me with comments and remarks on what the impact to your agency will be of this CBDC. That's 6 months. That's 6 months. It's ready to go. The system is ready. It's been being built since 2015. So this is here. People need to realize it's here. It's going to happen fast. If they don't think it will happen fast, so I heard somebody say, well, the Federal Reserve is a very conservative organization and they're waiting for blah, blah, blah. I'm like, they've been building it since 2015. Yes, they're conservative, but just because you just heard about it doesn't mean it's new to them.
Right.
They're conservative because they just announced it to your dumbass now. Yes, that's conservative. That's what being conservative looks like. 8 years later, after they begin the process, they announce to you. When it's done, tested, working, and they've even released out open source code that anybody could take a look at. Right? So that's what's coming. The answer, the only answer, is you have to be participating in a parallel economic system, and you have to start building it now. That's it. Because there will come a point when you cannot build it. When your ability to build that, to build and to be involved in that system is going to be not there. It will just be The most important thing that people need to understand is it will just be invisible to you. I know this is hard for people to get. It's hard for people to get, right? But it's like, I think there was a good example of this. I always forget her name. What is it? Sun-Yi Park? I think her last name is Park. This North Korean defector who's done the rounds. She's great. She's done the rounds, right? Yeah. And one of the things where she talks about how like she didn't know anything about the outside world. Like she thought that like they had taken the Christian story and put it onto the Kim family, and they thought that like Jesus Christ, like the story of Jesus Christ, was something that happened to like the Kim family, and that they really understood that, and there was nothing outside. It wasn't until she left that she realized like, oh, the external world is completely different than what I thought. And it's like, how do you know? How would you know? Right? That's what troll farms and bot farms are for. That's what control of the platforms are for. And when they've got people in the metaverse, then it's curtains. Like, I get all my news from Twitter. I get all my news from Facebook. Well, we already know. Like, we already know that state actors, they always say it's foreign actors that are doing the manipulating. You think you're not being manipulated by your own government? You think you're not being manipulated by the intelligence services that speak your language? You think Russia is more concerned about manipulating your opinion than your own masters? Really? Like, stop and think about that for a minute. You think Putin is more concerned about manipulating the American public than Joe Biden? That's absurd. Putin's more concerned about manipulating his own people. They all are. They all are, because that's who's the threat. Am I a threat to Vladimir Putin? No. Am I a threat to Joe Biden? Potentially. As an American, every American is a greater threat to an American president than they are to a Russian president, right? So think about that. Think about that. And so that's why I say it will be invisible. Not only will these networks, as they're developed, not want to put their heads above water, but you will also be cut off from any information that they even exist, which is very, very easy to do. So now you can start to build them. Now you can start to be a part of communities that are building them, but it's going to be very, very fast. It's not decades. It's a matter of years before this thing goes over the top of everybody. And it will happen so fast. Think about the last 2 years. It will happen so fast.
There's going to be people listening that hear you, agree with you, and understand what you're saying and go, well, how do I do that? Like, I don't have any skills to start building this alternate system. Is there advice you would give someone that would say that?
Yeah, first, that can't be the end. Like, that's the problem. For most people, that's the end. They're like, oh, I hear this, I agree, but I don't have the skills to do it, so okay, so I'll stop thinking about it. And it's like,
yeah, so inject me.
Right. It's like, no. Of course you don't know. Right? Of course you don't know. But it's like, for every one person who says that and then is like, literally just, well, what would be something that they could do? It's like, oh, I don't know that. Well, how about you just like even write a tweet? Hey, saw you on Buck's show. I have no idea how to do that. What would you suggest? For every and I will answer. For every one person that does that, there's 10,000 that don't. There's 10,000 that don't. Right? And it's like, it's literally that simple. Just ask. Just ask. But it's also not a matter of like throwing pearls before swine. Because at the same time, it's like, it wouldn't, those 10,000 people, it wouldn't help how much more advice I gave. Right? Because it's really this simple. Like, I could sit here and I could list out, I could spend an hour saying, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. Those same people who, if I didn't say that, would never do anything more, no matter how much information I give them, will not do anything more. And the person who actually would reach out, no matter how much information I gave them, would do it, would reach out and take the next step. right? So more than anything, and I think that now we come full circle to this idea of decide how you want to suffer. You can't decide not to suffer. You can decide how you want to suffer. Suffer up front, right? Be like, no, I believe this, so let me do the work up front. Let me do the work up front so that I don't have to suffer on the back end. Like if somebody is telling you these things, it's like, okay, I hear time to get to work. The thing is time to get to work, not that's a black pill. That's the other thing that they might say. Oh, this is just a black pill.
Yes.
You're so black pilled, right? Okay, go listen to Michael Malice, who will tell you that it's going to be all okay. All right. I respect Michael Malice for his intelligence. I respect him for he's a fantastic troll. He's got a wonderful wit. I love it. Right. However, I can't be somebody who can try to find a silver lining in what it is that we're talking about. The silver lining is this is an opportunity for you to transform yourself. This is an opportunity for you to be someone better than you are today by doing the things necessary to put yourself in a better position. Acquiring the skills, dedicating yourself to something. That's the silver lining. The silver lining is don't let a good crisis go to waste. Just as your enemies are not going to let a good crisis go to waste, you don't let it go to waste. You let it be an opportunity for you to become something better. And the way that you do that is to decide, I'm going to work today.
What an ending. Well put. There's a lot of nuance to what you just said. I hope a lot of my listeners can pick up on that. Before we get out of here, plug anything you'd like, including the Royal Path, your products, website, anything.
Yeah, I would love it if people would check out our podcast, The Royal Path. It's definitely a literal labor of love. It's myself, another Orthodox brother, Andrew, and my spiritual father, Father Turbo Qualls. And I think it is of course I'm partial, but I love spending 2 hours with Father Turbo. It's wonderful that I get to spend 2 hours a week with my spiritual father. He's a very busy guy. But yeah, I would say everybody check it out. You can just type in Royal Path or The Royal Path on YouTube. My school, Bitcoin Mystery School, if you want to learn more about how to develop these alternate parallel systems, you want to learn more about Bitcoin, even down to being able to write the code to get these things done. Bitcoin Mystery School, I've been doing it for about a year. I'm very, very proud of it. And we've got I think we're over 300 students that have gone through. We also have a private community for everybody who's registered and who's a student. It's been wonderful. The community is wonderful. And it's where I spend a lot of my time communicating. Definitely very hopeful, although also understanding exactly what's coming and down the road. So that's bitcoinmysteryschool.com. And then our long-running newsletter, Counter Markets, which if people are looking for actual strategies to get some of this stuff done, that's the place where we delve into it and dig into it. So that's countermarkets.com. That's our newsletter. That's been going on for about 5 years that we've been doing that. Also very, very proud of that. So any of those things, would love to see anybody involved in those. But and again, if there are other questions, I'm pretty easy to reach at Cyprianus, Cyprianous on Twitter.
Awesome. Cyprian, Vin Armani, my friend, thank you so much for being here on Counterflow.
Thank you, Buck. It was a pleasure.
I hope you guys enjoyed that chat with my pal Vin Armani, aka Cyprian. For this show, you guys know what to do. If you'd like to donate, I would love it. Patreon.com/counterflow. All of my links are over at counterflowpodcast.com. And we got some new sponsors rolling in. Thanks to my man Bobby for working hard behind the scenes to line that up. And what else we got? The Telegram group's going strong. We've got Based, Queen, Mackenzie, Puff in there, kicking out those trolls, those spam trollers that come in. But join the Telegram group if you've got that app. It's a lot of fun in there. Great articles. And until next week, you guys have a good one. See ya.
You get split in fucking half, till I call him the hologram brass. but I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus, but I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.